Hello, hello. It is Justin Colletti of SonicScoop. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode of the SonicScoop podcast. And today, I have just gotten back from NAMM in California, and boy, are my ears tired. That's like the most. That was just terrible. Why did I even start it like that? I mean, it's like the most obvious joke to make, and no one's ever made it. It's just dumb. But I am going to be going over the best new pro audio gear from the NAMM 2025 convention. And I've got to tell you, things have changed in recent years where there's not as much new stuff released at NAMM these days as there was 10 years ago and 15 years ago and 20 years ago because, well, the internet exists. And also, I think people got out of the trade show rhythm for a few years there for reasons we will say remain obvious. But let's get into some of my favorite top picks. I'll be doing the screen share today so you can see some of my favorite top picks. We'll be talking about these in some detail, and there's a lot of interesting stuff from a lot of interesting brands. Particularly, some of the stuff I'm going to start with are interesting integrations of hardware and software together, some interesting hardware units, especially the marriage of analog and digital. There's some interesting stuff going on in that space. There's some really cool new plugins I'm going to shout out, and some really cool headphones, speakers, and other stuff as well. I've got a big list here, so let's get right into it. Before I give you all of the big rundown, the first thing I've got to do is say a big shout out and thanks to our sponsors, the most important sponsor, as always, being you. How do you sponsor this podcast? Well, today, if you like any of the new gear, you can check out one of our affiliate links. I'll put them in the description and also in the comments down below later. And if you want to buy any of this gear or any audio gear in general, consider clicking one of our affiliate links. It's no extra cost to you, and it helps support great free content like this. The best way, though, to support great free content like this is to sponsor yourself by checking out one of our great full-length courses like Mixing Breakthroughs, Mastering Demystified, Compression Breakthroughs, EQ Breakthroughs. They will change the way that you work forever for the better, guaranteed, or your money back. I 100% recommend you start out with Mixing Breakthroughs if you don't know which one to get. Also, right after this session, last little note here is I'm going to be doing a Ask Me Anything audio session, live Q&A, where I will be taking your questions right after the conclusion of this. Is for members only, and you can become a member of the channel for just $5 per month right now. And this is your last chance to become a member for just $5 per month, because after that, the membership rates are going to double, and we're going to be getting onto a new membership platform. But those of you who join right now in January of 2025 or before, you're going to be grandfathered in at least for a while at this half-price membership. And I'm going to be increasing how many of our great mix feedback sessions we do. One of the most useful things I think we do on this channel, if you become a member, get to the mix feedback sessions, we listen to your mixes in real time, give you really concrete feedback and exactly what you can do to improve in your mixes. Or if you just have general questions about anything audio or audio business, making a living in music related, you can do that with me starting right after this, 5 o'clock Eastern. As soon as this live stream is over, we're going to roll right into our members-only Q&A. So check that out. You can click the join button on your phone if you're on the YouTubes, or go over to any of our YouTube videos, go into the description, you'll find how to join and become a member there. With all of that out of the way, here are our top picks. One interesting thing to me that was unveiled at this new NAMM show is this SSL 18. This is a brand new interface that these guys have put out. It is, 26 in, 28 out. Now, of course, that's if you're using digital devices to bring it up to that count. That's not the native analog track count of it, but still pretty darn high track counts. The SSL 18 is a high-performance USB interface, and it's got on it, as you can see, 8 different SSL mic preamps right on the front. And 2 mic line inputs here. So this is SSL finally coming out with a relatively inexpensive multi-channel audio interface to compete with the likes of your Apollos and your Antelope interfaces at a much lower price. Looking this thing up on the Googles, it looks like it is selling for something like $1,200. I mean, what does a 16-channel Apollo interface go for these days? With, I mean, it's now $4,000 for the 16-channel version. If we look at their 8-channel version, an 8-channel Apollo is about $3,000. So SSL is delivering this interface, which has got the 8 preamps built in, and it is expandable up into a crazy 26 in, 28 out, and that is just $1,200. SSL quality sound on this. So this is definitely, I think, an attractive option. I really like the Universal Audio Apollos. I think they are great interfaces. One of their selling points, though, is all the DSP power that's on board for real-time effects and for post-processing in the mix. But as computers get more and more powerful, it's less and less likely that it's absolutely necessary to have onboard DSP. So here is SSL coming to the market with a non-DSP device. There's a whole bunch of additional features you could check out. I'm not going to go super deep on all of these because we have a ton to cover, but I think that is one interesting thing that was announced at the NAMM show. All right, my next big pick here, also from SSL. This is the Alpha 8, and this device is only $900. And this is the ultimate audio interface expander, according to SSL. So this is in their Alpha Link range of stuff. Basically, this gives you an additional 8 ins and 8 outs of A to D and D to A conversion. So this is something that you could possibly get along with the aforementioned SSL interface, or you could use this to expand basically any interface. There is ADAT, SPDIF, and also can connect directly via USB. No, I don't think there's mic preamps built in this one, so it's just the conversion, but this is 8 channels there's some analog front end and some, honestly, when people say different converters sound different, it's almost never the converter. Almost all of the actual converter chips inside of any A to D or D to A converter you buy are practically all the same, and they're almost like the least expensive thing in the converter. What gives different A to D converters different tones, generally speaking, is the analog front end that is in them, the actual analog circuitry that the signal passes through. So this is a reputable company for that. We're assuming a little bit of the SSL kind of line tone off of this interface. So, not interface, technically A to D, D to A converter. And actually, it is a USB interface. Since it is USB standalone, if you don't need mic preamps, and you already have enough mic preamps, I believe you'll get 8 ins, 8 outs standalone via USB. So you could either take this ADAT out into your other interface to get more channels. You could go SPDIF out, I think, to get 2 more channels, I suppose. But also it can be used as a USB interface in and of itself. Or if you're using something like Pro Tools that really handles multiple interfaces very well, still one of the big selling points of Pro Tools for me in professional situations is you can use multiple interfaces, connect them all via USB. You could do that with this, or just use this as a standalone 8-channel interface and use your own front end for it. Relatively inexpensive price for a brand like SSL, just $900. So that one is super interesting to me as well. All right, moving on. Now we're going to get into this analog meets digital kind of end of things. This next, I got one more interface before we do that. There's also an Audient interface that's out now. This is a new one, the ID48. This is 24 ins, 32 outs, potentially audio interface. Again, when you see number counts like that, that's usually like if you expand it out with additional digital devices going into it. But this has 8 preamps, once again, built in right into the front of it. And the cost on the Audient, again, really reputable brand, pretty attractively priced. It's popping up here, man, on B&H for only $1,000. So Audient is another one of these famous British console makers. They're a little second fiddle to SSL as far as brand reputation goes, but a lot of people who love Audient really love Audient, and there's people out there who prefer the sound of Audient to SSL. So this is a classic British console maker. They've again got this basically 8 preamp interface for $1,000, a little less expensive than SSL. All right, moving on from here. Next thing that's really interesting is now a few devices that are all this digital meets analog thing. And this is a opto tube compressor from Antelope Audio. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't get to see this one in person, but this is hardware meets software in that it is a hardware analog device with motorized controllers that you can control like a plugin. And this one, here, first website that pulls it up here on Google is Vintage King, and is $3,000. So this thing, obviously the look of it seems to be based on the soft tube, what would be the CL1B, really classic opto tube compressor. Opto, for those of you who don't know, the most famous opto compressor is probably the LA2A. Things like the LA4, I guess the LA3A would have been opto as well, though solid state. But this is much more flexible than an LA2A. If this is going for the soft tube CL1B sound, I mean, it's much more hi-fi, kind of less grittiness than something like an LA2A, but really smooth, kind of program-dependent compression with a lot more variability than you'd find on a more vintage vibey LA2A style compressor. You have the fully variable attack control, as well as this fully variable release control. There's these different timing options. There's a sidechain link. You have selectable ratio. So when you think of an opto tube compressor, don't think of LA2A when you think of this. Think of it as being so much more flexible than that. It can do fast compression. It can do slower compression. It can do LA2A style compression, but more hi-fi sounding, bigger sounding. Really cool compressor. I imagine they're getting a sound close to that if they're making it look like this. And this is a $3,000 piece that is hardware, again, with software integration, where you can control it, to my understanding, with a plugin, and literally has proprietary motorized potentiometers. This is interesting. Do we need this in the modern day and age? Well, I don't know. If you want good sounding analog hardware, and that's still relevant to you, but you want like the plugin ease of use and control and like saving it in your session, and maybe I'd imagine some of the routing would maybe be handled by the plugin. I really want to see how that aspect of it integrates. I mean, it's definitely a cool idea, especially if you're going to, freeze your tracks. You'd have to play through this to print your audio, but you could potentially recall your audio. I mean, I think it's absolutely a cool idea. I'd be very curious to see how it works in practice. Has anything been done quite like this before? Let me know in the chat box if you're here for the live premiere, whether or not you've seen anything quite like this interface before. Speaking of the chat box, let me check out what's going on here. Ben says there is some controversy surrounding this unit to do with a plugin control and a subscription or something, if I'm remembering correctly. I doubt you would need a subscription to use a plugin to use your hardware. That seems unlikely. That would be a very dumb move on Antelope's part, and I would imagine that they're not that dumb, because I don't think that they're dumb. All right. Oh, Isomatic has joined, another one of our members. Hey, members Q&A is coming up right after this. Hopefully we'll be starting right around 5 p.m. If I'm a little bit late for it, it's because I went a little bit too long on this stream. If you want to become a member, just click the join button on your, basically anything else other than an iOS device. We'll have a join button on YouTube. If you're on an iOS device, go in the description, click join, just $5 a month. I will be answering all of your questions in real time as soon as this live stream ends. Ben says, people have made videos about it. Who's the guy who's, what's his name? There's a guy who's always doing these shaking his fist at the clouds videos lately. Is it not Barry Rudolph? It's not him, no. Who's the guy who's been doing like the, I hate you Pro Tools, I hate you Avid videos lately? The older guy? I think he has like a couple of easy listening credits or something. I forget his name, but that seems like the kind of video he would make. Let me know if you know who I'm talking about. I don't know. Send me a link or shoot it into the comments. I'd love to see this. Is it just musing? I know it can't be Barry Rudolph, because Barry Rudolph I think he has more credits. Yeah, he's like a big engineer. That's not the name. What the heck is that guy's name? Anyway. No, it's a guy called Aiden. Barry John. That's the one I'm thinking of. Thank you. He has a channel. That seems like the kind of content he would make, because I know he hates subscriptions, and I've seen a couple of his videos. The only ever time I've ever seen one of his videos is about like subscriptions being evil, and things like that. So I was wondering if that might be him, because I'm probably pigeonholing him. He probably has other videos, and he talks about a bunch of other stuff. I'm sure he's a lovely person. I just thought it was funny because apparently the only videos I've seen from him are the ones that are, hating on subscriptions. Because honestly, hating on subscriptions content blows up big. You could definitely have a channel and do your hating on subscriptions video, and that'll probably be your biggest video of the month. I haven't done one of those yet because I actually like subscriptions, although I wouldn't like it if my hardware-controlled software was subscription-based. Anyway, I digress. But hopefully you guys are partly here for the digressions, because that's like kind of the vibe when you're on a Justin Colletti video. So let's acknowledge that and keep on moving. All right. Our next big thing here that I think is super interesting with software digital control to some degree is this. Software and analog world meeting, or this is really more analog world, but it is intelligent digital control of hardware devices. This is the Satori Generation 2 monitor controllers from Antelope. Man, good monitor controllers are so underrated for those of us who have many monitors to choose from. So I thought this one was interesting. This is, on the higher end of things as far as monitor controllers go. It's like $2,400, but it was cool to see a new monitor controller of this caliber. There is this analog summing component to it as well. For those of you who are interested in that, it is not just monitor control, but also analog summing. And yeah, the feature set on this looks really interesting if you're looking for high-end monitor control and potentially software control of your monitors as well. There's a bunch you can do in the software integration of this, and they've got pretty intelligent remote. I don't know. I think Antelope makes good, high-quality stuff, and that was interesting to me. Okay, next big thing on the analog meets digital, that as soon as I saw this, it's like, oh, of course. Why didn't someone make this earlier? Black Lion Audio has come out with a patch bay that has an LED display on it. This image is a little small here. Hopefully you guys can see it okay, but this is basically, you can get either this TRS version or the TT version, the Bantam version, and you can program in either by plugging a keyboard into it or using a little USB stick, program in a LED readout of everything that's on your patch bay. This is so much better than the handwritten version of it, because often things in a patch bay need to change, and it can be super obnoxious to do that. I think it's cool that this exists. It is not a digital patch bay. It is an analog patch bay that allows you digital control of the labeling on the patch bay. If you want hardcore actual digital control within a patch bay itself, that would be the Flock Audio stuff, which is going to start at a much higher price than the stuff from Black Lion. Speaking of Black Lion, this was one of the other cool hardware pieces, basically a recreation of the Shure Level Lock compressor from Black Lion Audio. This guy is $500, and it is that demented, crushing sound of the Shure Level Lock in hardware form. Honestly, the Soundtoys plugin, which is called the Devil Lock, is so cool, so flexible. If you just get the Soundtoys 5 bundle for like practically the same cost as buying this one piece of hardware, then you are going to have a great Shure Level Lock sound as a plugin in the box. But if you're looking for really fun hardware, this is absolutely that. So for those of you who don't have the Soundtoys bundle, which, by the way, Soundtoys are a supporter of this podcast, so I should shout them out and say, get anything they make for free for 30 days over at soundtoys.com. But if you're looking for a hardware version of this crazy type of compression limiting, this is cool that it now exists physically in the hardware realm, if you're into the hardware. All right, let's keep on going to my next pick. More of this analog digital integration stuff, and then into the plugins. And there's a really new, really interesting, really exciting plugin that I can't wait to tell you about, but it's going to have to wait for just a couple more minutes as we get through this section. All right, here's another big thing in the world of sexy, sexy hardware. This is the ASM 164 summing mixer from API. And API, obviously one of the most famous, respected console makers in history, great preamps, really interesting, great compressors. The API 2500 compressor, awesome. This is them doing a summing mixer. Now, it's basically the box console, which I think costs probably like $16,000 or more. I'd have to double check what the API box console is going for these days. Let's see. Yeah, starting $16,000, $17,000. It's basically a version of the box console, but without any of the EQs or faders. It does kind of have faders. You actually have these little pots on here that are faders and little pan pots as well. So it's almost like a mini mixer where you can mix with potentiometers rather than faders. And it has two different buses that you can assign things to. So there's an A bus and a B bus. Honestly, when it comes to summing, I believe that the summing part of analog summers is kind of a red herring. I'm not here to say that analog summing devices don't sound different than summing in the box, but it is almost provably not the summing that's different. It is, again, just the sound of the analog circuitry that things are passing through that can impart subtle distortion, subtle. Honestly, there was this idea when people were first trying to push analog summing devices. It's like, the math in the DAWs isn't good enough and it's not close enough and it's messing things up. And it's actually kind of the opposite. The potential drawback to summing in the box with any modern DAW is that it sounds basically exactly like what's going into it. Like it does not do summing badly. The problem is with digital summing is that it doesn't do summing badly in a way that sounds cool. Almost all that we like about analog is analog signal messing things up, making things sound less close to the original source in a way that's awesome and badass and familiar to us. So I would say that the summing aspect of this isn't as huge as just passing stuff through the actual analog circuitry. But even then, it's like you could kind of almost just do it with 2 channels and you'd be good. But that said, there is something with the discrepancy in channel-to-channel tolerances where, like, it's been proven that if you take a left-right stereo signal and you add a little bit more noise to one side than the other, it makes the sound feel wider to us. Even though it's just weird analog artifacts that are being introduced. It hasn't added anything good, in a sense. It hasn't done anything better. It's done things worse in a way that's awesome and familiar and sounds like we're used to liking things sound. I have mixed feelings about the analog summing because I'm like, yes, does API have a tone? Yes. Could running stuff through an API change or even improve the tone of what you're doing? Yes. Could doing that through 2 channels of API be just as effective as doing it through 16 channels? Probably also yes. And that is the back-to-back A/B test I'd like to hear. Because I've absolutely heard A/B tests of summing devices and 2 channels against just digital. And man, I can differentiate differences, blind A/B tests all day long. I haven't heard someone do the test of 16-channel API summer versus 2 channels of the same thing and just putting the mix through that. I'd like to hear that test, personally myself, before spending $3,100 on something like this. Now, something like the box analog console for $16,000, that's actually easier for me to justify in my brain than this $3,200 device because it's like, it's got faders and it's got 500 series slots and you could actually use it to mix. Maybe you could kind of do that with this if you wanted to use the pan pots and the volume faders that are on this device. You could kind of use it like a mixing console and do tactile physical mixing, but there's a reason that people invented mixing consoles with faders. Like that layout just lends itself much better to mixing. So I'm simultaneously excited and skeptical at the same time. Let me know what you think about this. I could probably do a whole episode just about summing. Would you like to see that one of these days? Let me know if it's of interest to you. Here's something that takes a very similar concept, this next device. It's kind of the summing thing, but more useful than the summing thing. And this is Harrison, another one of those British makers of consoles that are super famous, along with Audient and SSL and Neve. Harrison has come out with basically a channel strip, and these channel strips can be gained together, basically creating your own rack-mounted console. So this one is not just summing, although it can do summing. It absolutely can. It has actual preamps and instrument amplifiers in each of the channels here. These are obviously sold individually, separately. There's a high-pass filter and a low-pass filter. Low band, 2 mid bands of EQ, high frequency band of EQ. You can change the lows between bells and shelves. So you get good analog EQ, good analog preamps and filters. And it has the additional benefit of you can use this thing as a summing mixer that scales. So you can start with just 2 channels. Maybe that's all you'll ever need. It'll be like your main stereo mic pre's / EQs, and also the thing you use on your mix bus for some extra analog sweetness, getting it out into that domain. And additionally to that, you can keep on adding more of them. So you can get 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them, 8 of them. I think they've tested with 24 and more of these, basically creating a console piece by piece inside of your rack. I guess one other thing I should add in the defense of both this and definitely the API is that they also have options for inserts. So just the fact with the API summing mixer that you could have different inputs on, different inserts on different channels, you can almost use that API summing mixer we were looking at as something of like a patch bay in and of itself, where it's like, oh, I want to use my LA2A today, my hardware LA2A. I keep that on channel 3 of my API summing mixer. So if I just send things in and out of channel 3, it'll be going through the insert, the LA2A. So that's one additional thing I'll add about a potential value. I was talking smack a little bit just now on the API summing mixer, but as a way to manage inserts and using it kind of like a digitally assisted patch bay for additional analog gear you may have, that's something where I could start now to see about, oh, maybe I would spend $3,200 on it. Maybe, if I had a lot of analog hardware. So that's something to think about. Similar concept here, except you can buy them channel by channel. The price on this is substantially higher, though. Let's look up 32 Classic MS Mix Strip from Harrison. And the price on this guy, it looks like $2,000, I think, per channel. Yep. So way more expensive than those interfaces we were looking at, but basically a channel strip off of a really good recording console. All right. Oh, I have headphones to look at and a whole bunch of other stuff. But before I do that, I've got to give a shout out to Soundtoys, who I was talking about before. They are a sponsor on this podcast as long as it's been a podcast, and they are sponsoring again this month. They make some of the greatest creative mixing effects out there. You should get their whole Soundtoys 5 bundle. It's the greatest steal in the world of pro audio. If you don't own it, just go get it. They're so much fun. They unveiled a new plugin that you can't buy yet called the Space Blender. It is, you can't really even see the font here. I'm sharing it from, it looks like Sonic State took a little video of this at NAMM. And I think I also found it here on, what is this, Synth Anatomy website. They've got a little image of it too, so you have to forgive the graininess here. This Space Blender is their imaginary space machine. It is basically an algorithmic reverb made of practically an infinite number of delay lines, but these delays don't feed back into one another. And the real perk here is you can do really, really, really long reverbs, like 4 and 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 30-second reverbs, without them getting overly boxy and cloudy and muddy sounding, because each of the delay lines is independent and doesn't feed back into itself. And then they have some other really just cool, fun, intuitive controls. The main knobs here are time, which would be fairly obvious, how long the reverb is, and it can go long, I'll tell you that. Color, which is an interesting multi-purpose knob that skews the thing more towards bright, more towards dark. There's, I believe, a number of things that's being adjusted with a color control. I don't think it's just a tilt filter. There is texture, which you can think of being a little bit like a diffusion control, like the density of the reverb, but it's more than just that. I believe there's more going on than just diffusion. Then there's mod, so the amount of kind of modulation warbling from one delay line to another. That one has some really interesting effects. And it can be really interesting with the texture and mod controls and color controls, even with short reverbs. You can get these tape slap echo kind of effects that can sound really interesting, like unconventional tape slaps, like demented tape slaps that are more like quacky or murky or pingy or springy. Like you can just get a huge number of wildly different tones out of it by playing with the exact ratio of color, texture, and mod. And it's kind of infinitely variable. And they're really cool sounding, really fun, really long. And it's got this freeze function that's also very cool, where you can have something kind of just linger in that reverb. Yeah, this one is something you've got to check out. Not available to the public yet. It is kind of alpha or beta, and they should, I think, have it out in the spring. So that's one of the plugins I thought was neat that was out. Another plugin that I thought was neat that was out is this Waves plugin. I did a whole video about it, the Sync VX. Waves, thanks to those guys for being sponsor of the channel as well. I got to do a deep dive on to this plugin, which is basically their answer to Vocaline for a lower price with more features. And I think it's stupid that it's been given 4 stars here on their website. There's 3 reviews because it's out for like a week now. And the one low review of 2 stars is like, this didn't work with my DAW because my DAW doesn't meet the specs for it. Okay, so return it. I don't understand why that would be a bad review. It's like, oh, I don't meet the compatibility requirements for this plugin and I bought it anyway without checking. You go get a refund. I don't understand why you leave a bad review for that. These other good reviews I'd agree with. You know, not every single Wave plugin that comes out do I love. Like some of them come out and I'm like, oh, you're just trying to come out with another plugin. Great. But this one, I was like, finally, thank you. This is Vocaline, but better at a better price. So awesome. I tested it myself and I gotta say, very useful. Those were the only things on the software front for me. On the hardware front, I was excited by this. The Audio-Technica R series of headphones. This is Audio-Technica's answer to, let's say, the Sennheiser HD600s. I think I happen to have my pair of HD600s lying around somewhere here. Oh yeah, here's actually my Sennheiser 650s. So the Sennheiser 600s and 650 headphones are probably the most famous, most ubiquitous open back headphones for under $400. These were out before there was such a thing as good headphones to mix on. I still don't think that these are actually great headphones to mix on. They have way too much. Let me rephrase this. They have way too little low end to make good mix decisions on. They just can't be, for me, or for most mixers or mastering engineers, a primary reference. They can only at best be a secondary reference. And that was true of headphone world in general for a long, long time, up until very recently, where today you can get headphones that could be a primary reference. Honestly, if you took away my $10,000 Pulsar Ex Machina speakers that are right here in the room, and you said, Justin, you can only master records using a pair of Odyssey headphones, I would say, yes, okay, I can do that. Glenn Schick does it with a pair of LCD4s. Granted, they're like $4,000 headphones. But even with these $1,800 headphones, the MM500s, I could master records on this and my clients wouldn't know the difference. The headphones have come so far. I don't think the Sennheiser HD600s are that. I think the new Sennheisers, the 490s, are definitely a contender for that. But also another contender that I think should be in the same breath with the Sennheiser 600s are the Audio-Technica ATH R70s. And they have now upgraded the R70s. They're still going to be in that same kind of price range. They're $350. I think that these are arguably maybe better than the Sennheisers. Like the old version of these were, I think, arguably better than the Sennheisers. They were even lighter weight, which is really nice. And I just think they have this different mid-range profile that's just a little bit more, slightly like more of this kind of mids forward, like thick thing where comparatively the 600s would sound maybe a little thin compared to them. But now they've upgraded further the R70, so they have better performance, but they've also made this new generation of so there's not just the R70 XAs. Let me check out what the price is on the new XAs. Yeah, they're $350. And now they have the 50Xs. And I believe the price on these have just gone down. So I think that these headphones, the new 50s, have basically, I think they have the original driver that the R70 did, and they're going to have them at a lower price. And I believe that these 50s, I'm not seeing a price on here, but I think they were going to be only $200. Let me see if we can double check and verify that price. So these are the Audio-Technica ATH R50. And is it XA? It just says X here. Here it's saying that they're going to be 139 pounds. That's in British talk. So I think if you carry the pence and divide it by the tuppence, then that equals like 150 US dollars. Let's see. The 70 is selling for 299 pounds or 350 euros for the 70. This is according to Sound on Sound, that's in Britain. And the 50s will be following soon at 139 pounds, 169 euros, and I believe these were priced around 150 or 160 in dollars as well. So these new R50s, I think here's the impressive thing. These are headphones that perform at least as well as the Sennheiser HD600s, but for about half price now. If I remember correctly, I think they are using the drivers of the R70s, but they've cut the price down substantially, and then they've upgraded the R70s to an even better driver that I believe may go even deeper. I want to study these more deeply. This is the first product we're talking about where I have questions about it. I was kind of told, I listened to them, but I can't 100% recall all these details, so I want to take a deeper dive into them. But in addition to these, they've also released, and this is super exciting, for those of you who want really inexpensive headphones, they're now going to have these, the ATH R30X, also going to be available in spring of 2025. And let's see if we can get some preliminary pricing on these, because I believe these headphones are going to be $100 for headphones that perform like good open back mixing headphones. If I recall from my listening test, this was at NAMM, it was noisy, and it was like my 9th meeting of the day. But I think I recall them being a little scoopier sounding, like a little more hyped up in the lows and highs, and a little bit less forward in the mids than the more expensive ones. But $100 good quality open back dynamic headphones, that's attractive. I'm glad that that exists. And let's see if we have any preliminary pricing. Not seeing it here, but I believe I was told that these should be coming out at $100. Let's see if it says so on Audio-Technica's website. Yeah, looks like they'll be coming out at $100 for good quality open back headphones. So that's exciting. I'm a bit of a headphone nerd. I like to try all the headphones that come out. So yeah. On to the next stuff. Next on my list, there was a few different devices, here we're looking on the Vintage King website, that are for controlling synthesizers. Probably the most ambitious of them was this by Melbourne Instruments. And they have this thing called the Roto Control, which is a DAW controller and a MIDI controller. This offers, I believe, some additional control, particularly over soft synths. But there were also some other devices that come out giving you additional control of hardware synthesizers. So this, I think, would be more relevant to someone using something like Ableton, and I think Ableton users have been particularly excited about this. I'm not that kind of person, so I can't give you the full pitch for the Melbourne, but it seemed interesting, and it seemed to be in a class of devices like this. This one is more for controlling analog synths. This is the Heritage Audio Synth Buddy, a 10-to-1 stereo passive desktop switch. So this is almost like the inverse of a monitor controller. If any of you are familiar with the old Coleman LS3 line selector switch, this is that like in reverse, where you can switch between different keyboards. So you can have up to, I think it's 10 stereo, so it's like 20 total inputs. So you could have 10 different synthesizers and then click between them using this one control. And it's only $200. I think that's neat. Another thing that's similar is Flock is teasing this new device. For Flock, if you don't know them, they make digitally controlled patch bays. They're coming out with something called the Flock Switch. And this is, again, really targeted at people doing synth devices. This one here looks like it's going to be coming out around the $900 price point. This looks, I believe, like a kind of digital mock-up of it. I don't think it's a photo of a real piece of hardware. But this one right here says $900. I think the price they told me, it might come out slightly lower than this one. It's really ready for market. But this is a digital analog controller. So it is digitally controlled analog switcher. So the Heritage Audio one, $200 for a good quality switcher for synths. If you want a digital version of that, this is the Flock Audio Switch. There's some potential additional benefits, like a little bit of additional flexibility you get the Switch. One thing I wish they would add to it is the ability to attenuate down signals so that you could level match all of your synths and go between them. And neither the Flock nor the Heritage does that, I think, as of yet. Flock does not plan on adding that to this device. From speaking to them, I don't think the Heritage can do that. They just select. So this can potentially be an issue if you have some synths that are instrument level, some synths that are line level, and maybe your line level synths come out blaringly loud compared to your instrument level ones. It would be neat to be able to do level matching in a product like this, but this is probably better than the nothing that most synth users are currently using to switch between their synths. Or you could go up a level from this and plug all of your synths into a patch bay and then use something like the Flock system of actual digitally controlled patch bays to mess with them. This reminds me of another thing that Black Lion Audio came out with that is on this switching end. They came out with something called the LS4. This is a better version of the Coleman Audio LS3 line selector, of which I have one here. Oh, of course, speakers are plugged into it, so I can't show it to you right now. But if you've never seen it, the Coleman LS3 was a super important device in the world of pro audio. It's one of these, a line selector. It cost $135, still costs $135. It was a plastic case, and inside of it is just a passive switcher. So you could switch. The most common usage for this would be switching between 3 different sets of speakers. You can also use it going the other way. So you could use this as a synth switcher as well. You could have 3 stereo synths going into it and then select which synth you want to listen to. This is $135. However, a couple problems with it. One, it's made out of plastic. 2, because it's made out of plastic, it's a little susceptible to radio interference and particularly cell phone interference. Like if I put this cell phone near any one of my audio devices and someone starts trying to call me or starts trying to roam, let me see if I can get to do it. You can get that sound if you've ever heard it before. I don't know if I'm successfully doing it right now, but it goes. I hope someone doesn't clip. Someone's going to clip that now, right? This is going to be the one clip of me that exists on YouTube when people want to make fun of me. They'll just take this clip that goes, that's me going, me trying to emulate GSM interference with my mouth beats, which I'm not very good at. But basically, Black Line Audio, as they often do, say, oh, that's an interesting device you have there. Would be a shame if someone made it better and cheaper, wouldn't it? So that's what they did. They made it into a 4-channel device. They made it out of steel, aluminum, I don't know. But apparently it's better at rejecting that kind of GSM interference. And it's much more like a solid box. If you like hold this thing and wrap on it, you're like, that's going to last. And it's $150 for 4 channels in a sturdier build, more likely to reject radio interference, if that's a problem for you, as well as GSM interference. So better version of the Coleman line selector. I don't see why, for $10 difference, why you wouldn't buy this one instead of that one. My humble opinion. All right, moving onwards to our next stuff. Oh yeah, Neve came out with something neat. This is the 88C. This is a hardware dual-channel compressor. This is a $1,200 2-channel analog compressor that's meant to fit on your desktop. It is based on the dynamic section of the Neve 88R. Man, look at this fancy thing they're doing on their websites with all these little rollovers. My goodness, it's so fancy. Too fancy. More fancy than I need it to be. Oh, it tells me that the makeup gain control is a makeup gain control, and it's giving me the additional information that it is 30 dB of makeup gain, which I could have read by looking at the thing. Threshold, what's interesting about that? Oh, it's an 88M optimized threshold. Good thing this little pop-up device landed so that I would know that it's an 88M optimized threshold. And 4-stage input metering. Yes, I can see that. There's 4 things that are input meters. Okay, thank you for your super fanciness that's giving me information that's already here. Variable release, 0.03 to 3 seconds. Yes, I can see that by looking at where it says release and looking at where it says 0.03 and 3. I don't know how this is helping me. Maybe this one will help. Independent true bypass, that is, yep, okay, that's additional information. Adaptive attack technology. All right, I'm making fun of things being fancy, probably just because I'm jealous and I have the least fancy YouTube channel ever. So if I see something that's like visually fancy, I have to go, clearly it's not good. Clearly you aren't real audio people because you don't know how to not be able to use your eyes like me. There's a joke. Have you ever heard this joke? It goes, how many audio guys does it take to screw in a light bulb? Answer, I don't know. I don't do lights. Definitely don't do lights. Not well. Okay, continuing onwards, it is a fancy 2-channel compressor based on the Neve 88R series consoles. I don't know. I don't know if a Neve 88, if that's like what I would be thinking of wanting to get the dynamic section of. Not that's bad at all, but it's not something that leaps out at me of like, that's the compressor that I really want and really need in my studio. But maybe I'm totally wrong. Please let me know. Do you have more? I used to work on a Neve VR console, and back then people liked the VR, but they kind of wished that they had an SSL or like an old school Neve or something else instead of the VR, even though they really liked the VR and it was good. Almost anyone who had a VR was like, yeah, this is a really good console, but my secret dream console is this other console. But maybe I'm not being fair to them. Maybe the VR is awesome, the dynamic section is awesome, and I should want this. Let me know what you think if you have more extensive experience on the VR than I do. Man, I shouldn't bring the snark. This is terrible. I've been being snarky. All right, the Barefoot Footprint 03C. This is a dedicated center channel they've made for surround sound systems. And this isn't the only thing that was new in speakers. Another thing new in speakers is Focal. They had, I think, some new colors for their Solo 6 and Trio 6, and they had an upgrade to their Utopia line. But also, Dynaudio is showing off their new M series. They revamped the whole M series, which is their super high-end stuff. I got to check these out at NAMM and listen to some surround sound demonstrations. Really great sounding monitors. I believe it was the M series from Dynaudio. No, it wasn't. It was the high-end Genelecs that were in strange weather. But Dynaudio makes some great stuff. I recently evaluated some of the new speakers in their core line. Great speakers at that price point. If you're looking for super high-end stuff, the Dynaudio M series is potentially a great way to go. They're really inexpensive stuff. The LYD series performs really nicely in its price range as well. And these were some magnificent sounding speakers, and they're just the newest, most updatedest version. So they were showing those off at the show. And I thought they sounded good, as they should for monitors that in the tens of thousands of dollars. What else here? Oh, here's some Vintage Kings picks. I think, yeah, they mentioned the Black Lion. They mentioned the Harrison. Focal, yeah, I said that they had some new colors, I think. Who else? This is Utopia. This was another thing that I had on here. They came out with a new version of their Utopia main monitors, Focal. This is their high end. So there was some movement there from Focal as well at their upper end. Both these and one smaller set of monitors. This was interesting. From Shure. Shure has a new Shure SM7B interface. I guess it's called the MV7i Smart Microphone and Interface. Their copy goes as follows. Step into a new era of recording with the Shure M7i Smart Microphone and Interface. The first of its kind USB microphone, complete with a built-in audio interface. It simplifies two-channel recording on computers, tablets, and smartphones. Connects any XLR or instrument via the combo XLR jack. So it is kind of neat and kind of interesting. It is a two-channel interface that is a microphone. So this is not a bad way to go for someone who wants their first microphone for either podcasting or recording. This could be a great vocal microphone and all-around instrument microphone. To my understanding, it's basically a Shure SM7B, or at least is made to look like one, which is, if you're only going to have one microphone and it's a dynamic microphone in your whole studio, that's a good one to have. They can be a little bit bottom heavy, a little bit much on the proximity effect, but as long as you can take some lows out when necessary, then it could be a great choice. But I think the kind of neat thing here is that it is a USB microphone that is also an interface. So you see there's an additional input on the back. So if you were doing interviews, you could potentially just buy this microphone and you're like, hey, I want to upgrade to 2 channels. Then you buy another microphone and plug it into your microphone. And then both microphones go out to your DAW or your computer. I think that's kind of neat. I've seen these USB microphones before that are supposed to be an interface all in one. Usually they're like a 1-channel microphone, the USB out, and maybe there's a headphone out on the microphone, and maybe there is a volume control for that headphone. But I think the addition of having a input to the microphone is a great idea. I believe that Antelope Audio did something similar with their My Creator. Let me see if not Antelope Audio, I'm sorry, Austrian Audio. The My Creator, I think that's what it was called. Austrian Audio, where they had a little condenser microphone. Yeah, it was a USB-C microphone that you could connect another one of their USB-C microphones to. So I believe it has like a little 1/8-inch jack. So you could get a My Creator and then a My Creator satellite that looks almost identical. So you could have two of these things and then kind of connect them together. So here's like the little satellite. And this is neat because it's like its own self-contained system and it's super small and tiny and you could travel with it. And this is actually even less expensive because you'd spend $200 on just the interface / microphone. And then if you want to spend $100 more, you get this little add-on microphone. So now you have two microphones and you can get custom plates and stuff for it with your own logo on it and this little carrying case. So it's really portable. But I think for a lot of people, taking that kind of concept and doing it on a microphone that has, it's a microphone and you can plug another microphone into it and it looks like a microphone. I think that could be cool. The one thing that's not immediately obvious to me is how to control your headphone level on this device right from the device. Like, do you only have software control? Is there a volume control knob somewhere? Is this little color strip both your input and output gain control? Is that like a touch sensitive LED strip where I could change input and output right on it? If so, that would be very interesting. I did not see this one demoed for me personally, but let's see. Customizable LED touch panel. A 36 color adjustable LED touch panel can be personalized to display live meter, pulsing, or solid modes. Configured to show the status of both microphone input or split. Okay, so it looks like that gives you visual feedback. Instant mute access. Instantly mute each channel by tapping on the LED panel with a RED animation indicating the mute status. Okay, so you can adjust it there. I imagine something similar is happening, but also says there's auto level mode with smart gate. So dynamically adjust the mic gain based on proximity, speech volume, and room acoustics, ensuring clear, uninterrupted recordings. So this might have ability built in to deal with the proximity effect that's sometimes an issue on the Shure SM7B. This is something that Lewitt really pioneered with their microphone, whose name I'm going to forget. Oh man, Lewitt has a new microphone that came out, it's a year ago now, that changes proximity effect and gain based on how close you are from the microphone. Now I want to remember the name of it. Ray. They had a microphone called the Ray, and I think it has almost like a little tiny digital camera built in that senses how far you are. I don't think it's literally a camera, but maybe it's like a laser that figures out how far you are from the mic and then adjusts the low frequency boost based on proximity as well as the level, intelligently adapting to that. And it looks like this Shure microphone does that as well. So it might not be the thing for the audio engineer market, but if you want to recommend to your friends who are like, I want to start a podcast, the mic to use, maybe this is a good one, the Shure MV7i. I'd like to hear it. If it sounds as good as a Shure SM7B and is stupidly brainless to use, it could be good for your friends who want to record their first stuff, and you might recommend to them, even if it's not the thing that makes sense in your studio for your needs. That said, man, if you have like an 8-channel interface and you want a Shure SM7B and one more channel, is that the mic to buy? I don't know. I don't know if I want all the bells and whistles necessarily, me personally. All right, moving onwards. That was the Shure Level Lock. We looked at that. That was the space. That's it. Those are my main picks, dudes and dudettes. All 1% to 2% of dudettes who have joined us. There's a couple more things I can mention real quick. Let's put them in. This is another one of those analog meets digital devices that's super sexy looking. This is the Black Box Analog Design HGQ, and it looks like they have both a software and hardware version of it. So this HGQ, EQ, and tube saturation device, the maker of this cornered me at last year's NAMM, said, I'm coming out with this with next year's NAMM. Can you do a video for me on it? And I was like, I don't do so many videos with plug-in lines anymore. We actually hired out one of our former employees, Charles Hoffman, to become the main guy now at Plug-in Lines. So congrats to Charles and congrats to Plug-in Lines. He's doing like all of their videos now, and I get to do other videos. I think I did pretty much all of the Plug-in Lines videos from like 2019 to 2023 or something like that, and helped produce a lot of the ones that you don't see my face in, often working as like an artist liaison and stuff like that. But they will have to probably do their own video on this unless they want to do something on the SonicScoop channel. But there is this piece of hardware that I believe can be digitally controlled and work in conjunction with the plugin. And this is a multi-channel saturator / multi-channel EQ. I mean, most EQs, not multi-channel, multi-band, let's say. That's more accurate, multi-band. And look, they already have this plug-in version of it as well. So you can have total software control. Between you and me, the guy who designed all the hardware was like, man, we sell so many more of the plugins than we do of the hardware. And probably, I would imagine that the dollar value too is even higher on the plugin, just because how much easier it is to sell a couple $100 plugin than a few $1,000 piece of hardware. But for those of you who really want it in hardware, they also offer, I believe, digital plugin-based control of this hardware through software. And the price on it, man, $6,000. Now, this is something that I could see being in a high-end mastering studio. I mean, we use something similar to this, Joe Lambert mastering. It was the Buzz Audio EQ that had kind of independent saturation on each of the bands. This one is 3 bands, left, right, mid, and side. So low, mid, high, they can be shelf or bell filters. Cool, sexy analog hardware, cool, sexy plugin made based on it, and there is also some of this software-hardware connection. Both Cranbourne and Alesia came out with 500 series stuff. So there was a new Cranbourne 500 series thing called the Brick something, and then there was an Alesia unit. That was interesting. I think it was like a master bus processor. I don't cover 500 series a ton, but check those out. Look up new releases from Cranbourne and Alesia if you're into 500 series. Last couple things really quick. Peluso, who make great microphones, they have something now called the P24, sexy $4,000 2-channel microphone that I imagine is basically 2 AKG C12s in one. So cool, high-end microphone. Amazing that such a high-end microphone has such like a 1990s GeoCity website with this 1990s GeoCities font. I would recommend taking a few of the dollars from this price and then just updating your website so it looks like it's from at least 2008. Now, I should not talk, because if you go to justincolletti.com, my website probably has not been updated. It's like 2011 or something like that. But I don't really use my website. I use the SonicScoop website. My personal website, I shouldn't talk, but mine looks like it's from 2011 instead of 1999. So it's a slight improvement, okay? Sorry, I'm being super snarky on today's stream. Do I usually bring this level of snark? I don't think I do. What has gotten into me? Nord had some new keyboards. And last one I'll mention is Rhodes. They came out with a new, what used to be the Fender Rhodes keyboard, new Rhodes keyboard, a smaller one, I believe a 61 key hardware keyboard, and I believe that they were adding MIDI to their larger 88 key ones. So that's worth checking out. Of course, we're in the range of a few $1,000s still, I think, for these devices. Now, back when I was a youngin', in about 2010, when I was playing in the indie rock bands, you could get a Fender Rhodes keyboard for like $350. And now they want like, I don't know, it's $3,500 for a new one. Of course, it would be expensive to build one. This is a beautiful piece. If you've never played a real hardware Rhodes or a real hardware Wurlitzer, they are just an experience. Sometimes a slightly annoying experience, because if you get a really old Rhodes, it's like super saggy in the middle and the action is shot, and it's like playing on a bunch of marshmallows, where you have to compress the marshmallow halfway before you get a sound out of it. But if you get a well-calibrated Rhodes or Wurlitzer, it's so much fun to play those. And I can understand and appreciate that people are still making them today, even if they cost $3,500 rather than $300 at a yard sale like they did for me back in the day. No, it was way earlier than 2010 that I bought my Rhodes. I probably bought my Rhodes in 2003. So by 2010, they were probably $750 to $1,500 or something like that. I think in 2003, I bought my Rhodes for like $300. And it was in really good action, really good shape. I wonder how much that would go for now. Please don't tell me. Because I think I sold it when, they were not whatever today's price is. All right, and that's about all I got. For the rest of you, I would recommend checking me out on the live stream about to start next. I've gone for about an hour, and I'm going to go for another hour answering questions right now. Q&A, members only. Click the thing to become a member. Also, check out one of our great full-length courses like mixing breakthroughs, compression breakthroughs, EQ breakthroughs, and they will change the way that you work forever for the better, guaranteed, or your money back. Also, big shout out and thanks to Soundtoys making some of my favorite creative mixing effects in the known universe. Try out anything they make for free for 30 days over at soundtoys.com. Consider becoming a member as your last chance to become a member for just $5 a month. After that, the price is going way up by double to $10, which I guess isn't way up. All right. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's been Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop. See you next time.